Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going deep into AI regulations, specifically looking at some interesting developments in the European Union.
Yeah, it seems like there's some pretty significant shifts happening over there.
Absolutely, and we're going to try to figure out why and what it all means. Our main source today is a pretty fascinating article from AI Times about a recent AI summit in Paris that's got everyone talking.
It's really got people buzzing because it seems to signal a change in direction for the EU. They've always been known for having really strict rules about AI.
Right, exactly. So this AI Action Summit in Paris, it's actually the third in a series of global summits focused on AI. We had the UK's AI Safety Summit back in 2023, and then the AI Seoul Summit just last year.
And those were important for sure. A lot of discussion came out of those summits, a lot of declarations, about AI safety and ethics, but most of it wasn't really binding.
So this Paris summit is different.
Yeah, there's a feeling that this time the EU might actually be ready to make some real concrete changes.
And that's partly because of pressure from the US.
Yeah, in part, but also there's some internal pressure within the EU itself.
Okay, so let's talk about that internal pressure first. The AI Times article highlights this growing concern within the EU that their own AI Act, which is this huge piece of legislation designed to regulate AI, might actually be backfiring.
Yeah, some people are worried that it's actually hindering innovation and investment in the EU.
Which is kind of ironic, right? Because they're trying to regulate AI to make it safer, but it could end up making them fall behind in the AI race.
Right. The EU has always been big on ethical considerations and data privacy, which are obviously really important. But now some folks are saying that these strict regulations are putting them at a disadvantage compared to the US.
Makes sense. It sounds like they're trying to walk this tightrope between protecting their citizens and promoting a healthy AI industry.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see this tension reflected in some of the things being said at the summit. Like French President Emmanuel Macron said, "We will simplify regulations. It is very clear that we need to get back on track with the rest of the world."
Wow, okay, yeah, that's a pretty clear signal.
Definitely, it shows that the EU is taking this problem seriously. And it's not just Macron. The AI Times article also mentions that even Kerry Breton, the EU commissioner, who's been a big supporter of the AI Act, he's now admitting that they might need to reevaluate things.
To reduce the burden on the industry.
Exactly.
Interesting. So it sounds like there's a real shift happening in the EU, but you also mentioned pressure from the US. What's going on there?
Well, the U.S. tech giants have not been shy about voicing their opposition to the EU's digital regulations.
Like Meta?
Yeah, Meta especially. They've been grappling with the AI Act, but also the DMA and DSA, the Digital Markets Act, and the Digital Services Act.
Which are all designed to kind of keep big tech in check, right?
Yeah, basically to promote fairness and transparency online. But obviously these companies aren't thrilled about it.
And their argument is that these regulations are too much.
Right, they say it's too much of a burden and that it stifles innovation. Meta actually even threatened to appeal to the U.S. government over the AI Act's implementation.
Wow, okay, so what has the US government said about all of this?
Well, it's interesting. During his presidency, Donald Trump called the EU's tech regulations tariffs and even suggested that there might be trade retaliation.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this has the potential to become a much bigger issue. It could impact global trade and even international relations.
Definite. And to make things even spicier, there's a rumor that Lian Wanfen, the founder of DeepSeek, might be at the summit.
DeepSeek, isn't that the company that developed that controversial AI model? The really advanced one, but kind of secretive?
That's the one.
So DeepSeek might be involved in all of this?
Yeah, their presence at the summit would definitely add another layer of complexity to this whole thing.
Okay, so we've got internal pressure within the EU, we've got pushback from US tech giants, and now potentially DeepSeek in the mix. I mean, where does all of this lead?
Right, that's the big question. Is the EU actually willing to soften their stance on AI regulation to attract companies like DeepSeek and boost their own AI industry?
Or are they just trying to find a more middle ground approach, something that addresses the concerns of both the innovators and the people who are advocating for responsible AI development?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely a situation worth watching closely. The decisions they make will have huge implications, not just for Europe, but for the future of AI globally.
Okay, so before we get into the specifics of DeepSeek and what they might be up to, I think it's important to understand why the EU's AI Act is causing so much concern in the first place.
Yeah, it's a good point. We need to get into the details of those regulations.
So what exactly are the key provisions of the AI Act, and why are companies like Meta so against it?
Okay, so the AI Act is a pretty big piece of legislation, but one of the main things that's causing friction is this concept of high-risk AI systems.
High-risk AI systems, what does that even mean?
Basically, the AI Act categorizes certain AI applications as high risk if they could potentially have a big impact on fundamental rights or safety. So things like AI being used in critical infrastructure or law enforcement or healthcare.
So basically, if it could have a major impact on people's lives, then it's considered high risk.
Right, and for these high-risk AI systems, the Act has all these requirements like rigorous risk assessments and data quality standards and human oversight mechanisms. They even have to be registered with the EU.
So it's not enough to just develop the AI, you have to prove that you're developing and using it responsibly.
Exactly, and that's where the pushback comes in. Companies like Meta argue that all of these requirements are just too much, especially for smaller companies or startups that might not have the resources to comply with all of these rules.
So again, it's a balancing act between innovation and regulation.
Yeah, the EU wants to make sure that AI is being developed ethically and safely, but they don't want to stifle innovation or make it harder for their own companies to compete.
It's a tough situation. Okay, so now that we have a better sense of the AI Act and all this drama surrounding the summit, let's dive into DeepSeek and their potential involvement. What makes them such a big deal in all of this?
Well, DeepSeek is kind of an enigma in the world of AI.
How so?
They've created this super advanced AI model that's incredibly powerful and can do all sorts of amazing things, but they're also super secretive about how it works.
Wait, so they built this super powerful AI, but they don't even know exactly how it makes decisions.
Well, the AI Times article calls it a black box model. It gets amazing results, but even the developers themselves don't fully understand how it works.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's definitely raised some eyebrows. Traditionally in AI development, the focus is on transparency and explainability. You want to be able to trace the AI's reasoning, especially if it's being used in important decisions.
Like in medicine or self-driving cars where a mistake could have serious consequences?
Exactly. But DeepSeek has taken a totally different approach. They've put performance and efficiency above everything else, and it's paid off in terms of processing power. This thing can analyze massive amounts of data and find patterns that humans would probably miss.
So it's like a super-powered intuition machine, but one that's totally opaque.
That's a pretty good way to put it. And this lack of transparency is what makes DeepSeek so controversial.
Because no one really knows how it works or what it might be capable of?
Exactly. Some experts are saying that this black box approach is dangerous, especially if these AI models are used in things like law enforcement or self-driving cars.
Because if something goes wrong, you might not be able to figure out why or how to fix it?
Right, there's no accountability. And this is where the EU's AI Act comes in. Remember how it emphasizes transparency and explainability?
Right, especially for those high-risk AI systems.
So DeepSeek's model could actually be in violation of the EU's regulations if they try to use it in Europe.
Which makes their potential presence at this summit even more interesting. What are they trying to do? Are they going to try to convince the EU to loosen their regulations on transparency?
Maybe, or maybe they're looking for ways to adapt their model so that it complies with the rules.
So it's like they're pushing the boundaries, seeing how far they can go.
Yeah, exactly. And this whole situation really highlights this fundamental tension in the AI community. Do we prioritize performance and efficiency, even if it means sacrificing transparency? Or do we insist on explainability, even if it limits what AI can do?
It's a really tough question, and there are good arguments on both sides.
Definitely. And this debate is only going to get more heated as AI gets more sophisticated and becomes more part of our lives.
The AI Times article also mentions that even though DeepSeek has created this impressive AI model, there's a feeling in Silicon Valley that they haven't really contributed that much to actual scientific advancement.
Yeah, that's true. Their approach has been more about pushing the boundaries of engineering than making fundamental breakthroughs in AI research. They're really good at building on existing knowledge and techniques, but they haven't really expanded our understanding of AI in a profound way.
So it's like they're great at putting the pieces together, but they're not necessarily inventing anything truly new.
Exactly. And this difference between engineering and fundamental scientific discovery is another point of contention in the AI community. Some people say that companies like DeepSeek are too focused on short-term gains in commercial applications, whereas others say that real progress in AI requires a deeper understanding of how it actually works.
Like the difference between building a faster car and inventing a whole new mode of transportation?
A perfect analogy. And this difference in philosophy is reflected in how DeepSeek has gone about developing their AI. They don't really publish their research or collaborate with other scientists. They're focused on building a product that they can sell, and they've been really successful at that.
But it's that secrecy that makes people nervous, right? This black box technology being developed behind closed doors.
Right. It's hard to assess the risks of something when you don't know how it works. It all goes back to this tension between innovation and regulation.
It seems like DeepSeek is really shaking things up in the AI world. They're challenging the way things are done and forcing people to rethink the whole way we develop and regulate this technology.
Totally. They're disruptors for sure, and their presence at this EU summit could have a big impact on how AI regulation plays out, not just in Europe, but globally.
Okay, so we've got these internal pressures within the EU, the pushback from US tech giants, and now this potential wildcard factor with DeepSeek. What does it all mean for the future of AI regulation? Where do we go from here?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's clear that the EU is at a turning point. They want to be competitive, but they also want to do things ethically and protect their citizens.
It's about finding that balance again.
Exactly. And how they decide to balance those things is going to have a ripple effect across the world. It's going to impact the whole future of AI.
The AI Times article also mentioned that France is making a big push to become a major player in the AI world. They've announced all these investments in AI research and infrastructure, and they're trying to attract AI companies and talent to France.
Yeah, France sees AI as a key to economic growth and technological advancement. And they're not alone. Countries all over the world are recognizing the importance of AI, and they all want to be leaders in this field.
So it's not just about the EU anymore. This is a global competition.
Exactly. And the stakes are incredibly high. It's about investment. It's about talent. It's about setting the standards for how AI is developed and regulated. The decisions the EU makes in the next few years are going to have a huge impact on the future of this technology and how it shapes our world.
This is a lot to process. So just to recap for our listeners, we've got this potential shift in the EU's stance on AI regulation, driven by both internal and external pressures, including the pushback from U.S. tech giants. And then we have DeepSeek, this mysterious company that could really throw a wrench in the works.
It's a complex situation that's constantly evolving, and the outcome's going to have a huge impact on all of us.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored this potential shift in the EU's approach to AI regulation, the concerns coming from U.S. tech giants, the intriguing role of DeepSeek, and the broader global context of this whole debate. Now, in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some of the specific implications of this shift for the future of AI development.
So to really get why DeepSeek is causing such a fuss, we need to look closer at their AI model and how it's different from what other companies are doing.
Okay, let's do that. What makes DeepSeek's model so special?
Well, the AI Times article uses this phrase, black box, to describe DeepSeek's model.
Black box.
Basically, it means it's incredibly effective, but even the people who made it don't fully understand how it works.
Wait, so they built this powerful AI and they don't even know how it makes decisions? That seems a little unnerving.
Yeah, it's definitely raised some eyebrows. You see, usually in AI development, there's this big emphasis on transparency and explainability. You want to be able to understand how the AI is arriving at its conclusions, especially if it's going to be used in situations where those decisions could have a big impact.
Yeah, like in healthcare or finance, right, where a wrong decision could really hurt someone.
Exactly. But DeepSeek has gone in a different direction. They've focused on performance and efficiency over transparency, and it's worked. Their model is crazy powerful. It can analyze these massive data sets and find patterns that humans would probably never see.
So it's like this super-powered intuition machine, but we don't know how it works.
That's a good way to put it. And this lack of transparency is a big part of why DeepSeek is so controversial. Some experts say this black box approach is just too risky, especially if these AI models are used in things like self-driving cars or law enforcement.
Yeah, because if something goes wrong, you have no idea why or how to fix it.
Right, exactly. There's no accountability. And, this is where the EU's AI Act becomes really relevant. Remember how we talked about how the Act really emphasizes transparency and explainability?
Right, especially for those high-risk AI systems.
So DeepSeek's model might not even be allowed in Europe if they want to use it for anything serious.
So that's why their presence at this summit is so intriguing. Are they going to try to lobby the EU to loosen up those rules on transparency?
Maybe. Or maybe they're going to try to figure out how to make their model work within the existing rules.
It's like they're poking the bear a little bit, seeing what they can get away with.
Yeah, and this whole situation really highlights this fundamental question in the AI world right now. Do we prioritize performance and efficiency, even if it means giving up some transparency? Or do we say, no explainability is non-negotiable, even if it means our AI can't be as powerful?
It's a tough one. There are strong elements on both sides.
For sure, and this debate is only going to get more intense as AI keeps developing and becomes a bigger part of our lives.
The AI Times article also mentioned that even though DeepSeek has built this impressive AI model, some people in Silicon Valley feel like they haven't really contributed much to the science of AI.
That's right. Their approach has been more about engineering, really pushing the limits of what's possible with current technology, but they haven't really made any fundamental breakthroughs in terms of our scientific understanding of AI.
So they're good at building things, but not necessarily discovering new things.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And this distinction between engineering and fundamental research is another big debate within the AI community. Some people say that companies like DeepSeek are too focused on making money and not enough on actual scientific progress.
Like they're building faster cars, but not inventing new ways to travel.
Exactly. And this difference in approach is really apparent in how DeepSeek operates. They don't publish their research or collaborate with other scientists. They just want to build a product they can sell, and they've been really good at it.
But that secrecy also makes people nervous, this black box technology being developed in the shadows.
Right. It's hard to know what to make of it when you don't understand how it works. And it brings us right back to that question of innovation versus regulation.
It seems like DeepSeek is really shaking things up in the world of AI, making people question how we develop and regulate this technology.
Totally. They're a force to be reckoned with, and their involvement in this EU summit could have ripple effects across the whole industry.
Okay, so we've got these internal pressures within the EU pushback from the big US tech companies, and now this wild card factor with DeepSeek. What does it all mean for the future of AI regulation? What happens next?
Well, that's the big question. It's clearly the EU is at a crossroads right now. They want to stay competitive in the AI race, but they also want to make sure that AI is developed ethically and responsibly.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly. And how they choose to balance those competing priorities is going to have a huge impact, not just in Europe, but globally.
The AI Times article also talked about how France is really going all in on AI. They're putting a lot of money into research and infrastructure, and they're trying to attract AI companies and talent to France.
Yeah, they see AI as the future of their economy, and they want to be at the forefront of this technological revolution. And a lot of other countries feel the same way.
So this isn't just a European issue anymore. It's a global competition.
Absolutely. And the stakes are higher than ever. It's a race for investment talent and the power to set the standards for AI development and regulation. The decisions that are made in the next few years are going to shape the future of AI and how it impacts all of us.
This is a lot to take in. So just to recap for our listeners, we've got this potential shift in the EU's approach to AI regulation, driven by pressure from both inside and outside the EU, including those big US tech companies. And then we have DeepSeek, this company that nobody seems to fully understand, but who could have a huge impact on the future of AI.
It's a dynamic and complex situation, and it's definitely something we need to keep our eyes on.
Okay, so we've explored this potential shift in the EU's stance on AI regulation, the concerns of US tech giants, and the mysterious role of DeepSeek. Now, in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some of the potential implications of this shift for the future of AI development. So we've talked about this potential shift in the EU's AI regulations, all the pushback from those US tech giants and DeepSeek's potential role in all this. But what are some real-world implications? Like, how could this shift actually change the future of AI?
Well, one area where we might see a big impact is in the development of certain AI technologies. Like, for example, the AI Times article mentions this new brain-computer interface technology that Meta is working on.
A brain-computer interface? What is that?
It's pretty mild, actually. It basically allows people to type using just their brainwaves.
Hold on, typing with my mind, that sounds like something out of science fiction.
It does right, but apparently it's real. And it's not as invasive as you might think. You don't need surgery or anything. You just wear this device that kind of looks like a hairdryer, and it reads your brain activity and translates it into text.
Wow, that's incredible. But how does this connect back to the EU's AI regulations?
Well, think about the implications of this technology. I mean, there are some serious questions about data privacy, right? Like, what if someone could access your thoughts?
Right. That's a little scary.
And then there's the potential for mental manipulation. And even bigger questions about what it means to be human when AI can get inside our heads like that.
Yeah, it raises all sorts of ethical dilemmas.
Exactly. And that's where the EU's current AI Act, with its focus on human oversight and data protection, could create some roadblocks for developing and using these brain-computer interfaces.
So if the EU loosens its regulations to be more competitive, it could speed up the adoption of technologies like this, but maybe at the expense of privacy and safety.
Right? It's a trade-off, and it's not an easy one. And it's not just about typing with your mind. Think about the potential applications in healthcare, or for people with disabilities, or even just for entertainment. This technology could be revolutionary, but it also raises these huge philosophical questions about our relationship with AI.
It feels like we're at a really crucial moment, like the decisions we make now are going to have ripple effects for years to come.
I think you're right, and this isn't just a European issue either. The way the EU handles AI regulation could influence how other countries approach this technology. It could set a global precedent.
So this potential shift in the EU could really impact the development and adoption of AI technologies all over the world.
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important to be having these conversations now. We need to be thinking about both the benefits and the risks of AI and figuring out how to guide its development in a way that aligns with our values.
Well, this has been a fascinating look into the world of AI regulation and the potential changes happening in the EU. Just to sum things up for our listeners, the EU is facing a tough choice. They want to stay competitive in the global AI race, but they also want to make sure that AI is developed ethically and safely. And the way they decide to balance those priorities is going to have a big impact not just on Europe, but on the future of AI everywhere.
And here's a final thought for you to consider. If the EU does decide to loosen its grip on AI regulation, will it trigger a global race to the bottom in terms of ethical standards? Or could it lead to a more collaborative approach where everyone works together to develop AI, responsibly balancing innovation with ethics?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll all have to grapple with as AI continues to evolve. Thanks for joining us today for this deep dive into the complex and always changing world of AI. It's clear that the future of AI is still being written, and the choices we make today will shape the world of tomorrow.